In the span of just 3 years, generative AI reached 53% population-level adoption. That is a rate of mass integration faster than both the personal computer and the internet. This is a chart tracking that exact adoption curve against documented AI incidents. As mass adoption climbs smoothly, the rate of system failures and misuse spikes in parallel, jumping from 233 to 362 reported incidents in a single year. The 2026 Stanford AI report identifies this friction point as the adaptation gap. AI is scaling exponentially, but the institutional systems built to govern, evaluate, and contain it are fracturing under the pressure. Our benchmark evaluations are saturating. Regulatory frameworks are struggling to align. Even the physical data infrastructure required to run these models is hitting hard planetary limits. To understand why these support structures are breaking, we have to examine the data across 3 specific vectors: technical capability, real-world deployment, and geopolitical choke points. The risk today is the structural friction created by an infinitely scaling technology operating within stagnant institutional frameworks. We often assume AI models possess a uniform general intelligence. In reality, they operate on what researchers call a jagged frontier, capable of extreme cognitive performance and severe deficits at the exact same time. This chart measures performance on SWEB Bench Verified, a highly structured software engineering benchmark. Over a single year, AI models jumped from a 60% success rate to nearly 100% of the human baseline. Yet, if you ask that same state-of-the-art system to perform basic spatial reasoning, like reading an analog clock, it fails nearly half the time, hovering at a 50.1% success rate. That paradox extends to the physical world. AI agents command an 89.4% success rate in software-simulated robotic manipulation. Place that same logic into a real robot attempting household tasks, and the success rate collapses to just 12%. Neural network scaling laws thrive in predictable, data-rich digital environments. They struggle immensely to parse the chaotic, undocumented variables of physical reality. Because our standardized tests are maxing out in those digital domains, we are actively deploying systems into the real world without a reliable way to measure their true boundaries. We can see the immediate effects of this deployment in corporate labor data, where the initial impact has been highly efficient. This graph tracks productivity in high-volume, structured corporate tasks like software development and customer support. Over the last year, the integration of AI tools delivered a measurable 14 to 26% boost in output. But those efficiency gains are hollowing out the entry-level pipelines that sustain those exact industries. Look at the hiring data for U.S. software developers aged 22 to 25. While overall productivity rose, employment for this specific junior demographic plummeted nearly 20% year over year. During that exact same period, hiring and headcount for senior older developers continued to grow. AI is exceptionally good at automating junior-level execution. It still requires senior-level judgment to verify and correct its output. By automating away the baseline work, corporations are erasing the exact training ground required to cultivate the human experts they will eventually need to oversee future AI systems. We see a similar dynamic in healthcare. Ambient AI scribes, tools that automatically transcribe patient visits, have seen massive adoption, cutting documentation time by up to 83% and measurably reducing physician burnout. But outside of those administrative tasks, the foundation for broader clinical AI diagnostics is alarming. This chart visualizes a recent meta-analysis of more than 500 clinical AI studies tracked by the Stanford report. Nearly half of these diagnostic models were validated using academic exam-style questions. Only 5% of them were tested against actual real-world clinical patient data. The healthcare industry is aggressively scaling diagnostic infrastructure based heavily on test-taking ability, rather than verified biological evidence. Globally, the assumption is that the United States maintains an absolute monopoly on AI development. On paper, the capital disparity supports this. Last year, U.S. private AI investment hit $285.9 billion, overshadowing China's reported $12.4 billion. That capital translates directly into physical infrastructure. The U.S. now houses 5,427 data centers, more than 10 times the volume of any other nation. This map shows that massive domestic data center footprint. But beneath this concentration of hardware lies a severe structural vulnerability. Almost every single leading-edge AI chip powering those American servers is fabricated by one company, TSMC. The entire computational foundation of U.S. AI supremacy relied a single island in the Pacific. The extreme precision and staggering capital required to build advanced semiconductor foundries have created an unparalleled bottleneck in global technology production. America's multi-billion-dollar AI infrastructure is anchored by a single point of failure, completely outside of its sovereign borders. That hardware bottleneck is compounded by a simultaneous collapse in domestic intellectual capital. This chart tracks the migration of top-tier AI researchers and developers to the United States. Since 2017, that influx has declined by 89%. Massive capital investment alone cannot sustain a geopolitical advantage when the required engineering talent and foundational hardware chains are severely compromised. Scaling this technology requires massive physical resources, and we are rapidly approaching the absolute limits of planetary energy infrastructure. Training a single frontier model exacts an enormous environmental toll. Grok 4 alone generated an estimated 72,816 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions before it ever answered a single prompt. Global AI data center power capacity has now reached 29.6 gigawatts. That is equivalent to the peak electrical demand of the entire state of New York. The daily operation of these models is equally taxing. The annual water consumption required simply to run GPT-4o inference exceeds the drinking water needs of 1.2 million people. The theoretical ceiling for AI software might be limitless, but its physical expansion has crashed into the hard, finite realities of thermodynamics and natural resources. When you look at labor projections, 73% of AI experts believe the technology will have a positive impact on jobs, yet only 23% of the general public agrees. That 50-point perception gap exists because the two groups are looking at entirely different realities. We are navigating an exponential transition with a broken dashboard. Our cognitive benchmarks are saturating, clinical deployments lack biological evidence, hardware supply chains are critically exposed, and the talent pipeline is fracturing. At the same time, open-source development is aggressively redistributing technical capability across the globe, forcing nations to scramble and build their own sovereign infrastructure. As these models embed themselves into the core architecture of the economy, education, and medicine, the demand for neutral, rigorous measurement has never been more urgent. The cost of incomplete data is no longer theoretical. This decade's defining challenge is the construction of human systems resilient enough to survive AI's integration.